today's video, we're going to discuss the headlight aiming procedure for your Boss snowplow. Now, this procedure is clearly outlined in our installation and owner's manual both, and the guidelines that we're following for this headlight adjustment is given to us by the Society of Automotive Engineers. The first step in aligning the headlights is to make a mark 25 feet from a certain wall or surface that you can reflect the headlights upon. Here what I've done is I've marked off 25 feet and I've got myself a tape that's showing that mark. All right. Secondly, what I want to do is basically just pick a point at that 25-foot mark off of another parallel line. Here I'm using a parallel line that's actually in the floor itself. And I got to make sure that I'm far enough away from that parallel line to be a center line of the truck. All right. So what I've done here is I've simply measured off 4.5 feet to be the center line of my truck. Now, to make sure that my centers are consistent, using that same line in the floor, I go at 25 feet to my reflective surface, and I again measure 4.5 feet from that parallel line, which gives me my center vertical line on my grid. Okay, this is going to be the center of my truck. So I line it with the center on my tape mark, 25 feet, to the center of this wall. Everything is in alignment at that point. All right, the next step is we're actually going to be measuring the plow's lights with it on the truck and the plow raise, as I said before. So the first dimension that we're going to take is from the floor to the center of the headlights. And it shows that they're at about 46 inches. Okay, now that dimension you're going to transfer to our wall grid. All right, so what I've done is measured from the floor up 46 inches, and that's my horizontal line. Now the next dimension that we're going to be measuring is the center to center point of the bulbs on the plow lights. Okay, this again is a dimension that we're going to transfer onto our wall. So when I go center to center, I end up at 40 inches center to center. All right, so that's 20 inches from both sides of my vertical center of the truck. And I measured 20 inches on either side of my truck center, giving me basically a grid pattern. Now, when I turn on the lights, you're going to see where the light patterns are focused, and there's going to be a main beam. On low beam, that's the one that we're actually going to be adjusting to this grid pattern. Now, this next step in the process is probably going to be a two-man operation. All right. Now, of course, safety first, right? So make sure you have good visual contact with the operator of the vehicle as it's approaching you. Okay. Safety glasses. I got gloves on. I've got steel toes and metatarsal guards. Because remember, that plow is going to be in the raised position, and I don't want anybody dropping it on their feet accidentally. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to have the operator actually start the truck, raise the plow. And what I'm going to be doing is signaling him to get the truck center aligned with that center mark that we made 4.5 feet from our edge point. Okay? Okay, now the truck is on center. I'm going to go to the side and make sure that I line up the headlights with my 25-foot mark we put on the floor. Good. Okay. Now I'm also going to keep the plow raised because as we adjust the headlights, we want the full weight of the plow on the truck. That's going to give you the true measure of that headlight beam on the wall. Now, since the plow is raised, not only am I wearing safety equipment, but an additional safety measure is I'm going to slide some guides, which I'm just using 4x4s, under the blade itself. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I will be standing behind this plow with it raised. If there is some type of a mechanical failure and that plow decides to drop, I at least have this guarding it from hitting the floor, possibly landing on my foot. All right, so it's one extra measure you can take. Now I'm simply going to turn on the lights, making sure that my selector switch is on plow and that my indicator is on low beam, because we're going to be adjusting the plow lights on low beam. So if you look at the way that our beams are reflecting against our wall, this would be my driver's side headlight. This is my passenger side headlight. When we're adjusting, what we're going to be looking at is the main focus area of that beam itself, which is right here on that driver's side, and it's right here on that passenger side. So when adjusting the Smart Light 2 headlights as I have here, you're going to need some pretty basic tools. You'll need two box end 9/16 wrenches. These wrenches are for loosening the side bolt or the up and down vertical adjustment bolt on the SmartLite 2s. You're also going to need what I'm using, just a ratchet and a 7/16 socket to loosen up the 4 horizontal adjusting screws on the lights themselves. All right, so usually works best by starting off and loosening the up and down adjustment. Now I've got movement of my headlight. And I'll also loosen the 4 bottom. No sense in making them too loose. You want it a little bit stiff so that as you make the adjustments, the light will stay in position for you. Okay? Now, what I'm simply going to be doing now is looking at my graph, and like I say, I'm taking that main focal part of the beam and I'm moving it to the inboard part of my graph. I want to raise it up into position, just like that. So the top of my low beam is to the bottom side of my horizontal grid marking and to the right side of my center line. So now that I have the beam focused in the position I want it to, the first bolt that I'm going to tighten is again going to be my vertical up and down bolts on the side with my 2 9/16 wrenches. Keeping my eye on the beam, making sure that it doesn't move as I'm adjusting it. Now I'm just tightening these, snugging them up. No sense in over tightening them. Remember, it's just a small 1/4-20 thread there. Don't want to be stripping that out. Now I'm simply going to repeat the same procedure for loosening the passenger side headlight. Again, adjusting that lens, focusing my beam. With everything loosened, now I'm going to focus that beam, again, below my horizontal mark to the right of my vertical line. Just like that. That's perfect adjustment right there. Preceding the SmartLite 2s was our SmartLite 1 headlights. Now the adjustment measurements and the way that you graph the floor and set up the lights and with the plow off the ground and everything is exactly the same. The difference, of course, being is the attachment system for this light. Here you simply have 2 studs. All you're going to have to do is loosen both of those studs and you get your adjustment and then retighten as you get it into the proper orientation on the grid. So like I said before, the areas that you want to focus that low beam focal point is this grid area right here and this grid area right here, which I've got, making sure that everything is below my horizontal grid line. This completes the headlight aiming procedure for your Boss snowplow. Now, as I said at the earlier part of the video, this is clearly all outlined in your installation and owner's manual. So if you can't follow along with the video, you can always reference that.